Good morning, everyone. Welcome. My name is Menachem Creditor. It's my honor to serve as scholar in residence and rabbi for UJA Federation of New York. We bring you Torah and music, blessing, and community every weekday. We've been doing so since March 18th, 2020. Today it is Thursday, September 12th, 2024. It is broadcast 1136. It is day 342 since October 7th. For over 4.5 years, we've come together with love and with kindness, greeting each other by name every single morning. Shush, it's good to see you. Adrian, Chana, Adele, Penny, it's good to see you. Bensi, I hope that you are well. Catherine and Linda, Debbie and Jonathan, Barry, Boker Tov, it's good to see all of you. We learn Torah every single day. We face the world every single day. We've counted all of these days. And through it all, friends, we've been constant. Perhaps that's the most important thing that we've accomplished, just knowing that we will be there together, here. Wherever here is for you, you are here now. We've created a real community, and that is a miracle that should be acknowledged over and over and over. We carry each other through the sad times, and we have been present celebrating too. When there is something special happening in our lives, we should never hide it. What a good thing it is to be alive, to have this moment, to know that we can do great good together. So let's see who else is here, and we'll sing a bracha in a minute. Cecile, Ziona, Arlene, and Sunday, Linda, and Natalie, and Debbie, and Ashley, good to see you. Fabrice, Lydia, and Judy, Peter, Julianne, and Deborah, it's good to see all of you. Natalia, and Amy, Joyce, Boker Tov. Let's take a breath. Hi, Marilyn. Arlene, you are going to Washington, D.C. later this morning to babysit your Maya. See, that's the good news we're talking about. Susie, it's good to see you. Let's take a breath, sing a blessing, learn some Torah. לעסוק בדברי תורה, לעסוק בדברי תורה, הפוך בה והפוך בה, לעסוק בדברי תורה. So, good morning, everyone. Thrilled, Anya, to celebrate your birthday with you. Today's Torah is in your honor. And also, friends, today is the funeral for a beautiful young man named Jonathan Freeman, whose parents, Adam and Janie, loved him so well and still love him so well. He was a veteran, he was a mensch, he was an Abba, and his loss hits so many, so very deeply. May his memory be for a blessing, and friends, let's bring his name into our learning so that we can honor him through today's sharing. It's Parshat Ki Teitzei, and in this Torah portion, we have a significant number of rules. 74 of the mitzvot that are in the Torah are found in this week's Torah portion. But I was looking for some depth wisdom today. And so I turned, as I often do, to the words of Rabbi Jonathan Sacks of blessed memory. So everything I'm about to say comes directly from a lesson that Rabbi Sacks gave. You can find it on YouTube. You can find it in writing. In one place, it's called Two Kinds of Hate, and I'm not sure what he called it in writing. But there are two messages around hate that we can find both in this parsha and throughout the Torah and in our current moment, because not all hates are the same, just as not all loves are the same. And Rabbi Sacks based his teaching on a very important lesson from much later in time, from Pirkei Avot, part of the Mishnah, around the year 200 CE, where we learn that ahava shetluya badavar sofa she'ina litkayem. A love that is dependent upon anything will not last. Once the thing it's dependent upon ends, so too will the love end. Ahava she'ina tluya badavar, love that is not based on anything, unconditional love, sofa shelitkayem, that love will endure. And so too, says Rabbi Sacks, this is the case when it comes to hate. Hate that is irrational will endure. Hate that is rational, though we do not justify it, will not endure. Which means if we are able to differentiate between different kinds of hate and figure out what are the hates that are based on things, not justifiable, but based on things, maybe that hate can be ended itself. There are perennial kinds of hate. Rabbi Sacks points to the different strains of anti-Semitism that have existed throughout time and in every place. That is an irrational kind of hate, that if only it would end, but we do not think it will end. But there are other kinds of hatreds that we do not exonerate, we do not justify, but they can be considered rational. And so, what are the two ways of discussing this? Rabbi Sacks points to the way the Torah instructs us not to hate Egypt, and the way the Torah in this week's Parsha tells us to forever hate Amalek. And Rabbi Sacks correctly points out how strange this is. How strange it is to be told not to forever hate Egypt, but to forever hate and not forget Amalek. Consider what each did to the Jewish people, to the Israelites. Egypt enslaved our entire people for hundreds of years, and Amalek assaulted us once. Wouldn't you assume that hatred must be enduring for Egypt, for what they did to us? And that for Amalek, who assaulted us once, it would be a different kind of response. But what Rabbi Sacks points to is that even though it was clearly wrong, even though we can tie the kind of hatred that Egypt, Pharaoh in particular, shows our ancestors at the beginning of the book of Exodus, even though we can point to it as evil, as diatribe, as polemical, as dictator, as all sorts of things that reverberate throughout history, at least Pharaoh said, and Egypt therefore said, we have to deal with them because there are too many of them, they might fight against us. It's not that there would have been any way to convince him otherwise, nor is it justifiable, but there's a rationale given. And once that rationale is removed, the hatred doesn't need to continue. But Amalek represents a different kind of hatred. Amalek represents a hatred that has nothing to do with what the Jews or the Israelites did or were. It was just that they existed. So there are two kinds of hatred. The Amalek hatred cannot, will not end. It's irrational hate. It will endure. Egypt is a kind of hatred that is based on a perception. And Rabbi Sacks points to how in America and in England, where Rabbi Sacks was the chief rabbi for some time, there have been strains of xenophobia that are argued based on things. They're wrong, but at least they have explanations. They're not justifiable, but they have reasons. They're wrong. We should fight against it, but at least it's presented with reasons. but the irrational hatred of the other is different. As Siona just wrote, Amalek hatred is causeless. And so I would ask us a very hard question in this moment. I'm asking myself this question because I listened to the words and the beautiful lyrical voice of Rabbi Sacks teaching this beautiful Torah. And I wondered to myself, as Linda just did, can this be applied today? How do we think as Jews today about hatred directed against Jews? Because not all hatreds are the same. Specifically, how do I think about us in the aftermath of October 7th? How do I handle all of this? How do we contemplate it? Does it fit into these frameworks that Rabbi Sacks eloquently described? Though he described them before October 7th, he didn't live to see October 7th. And I would offer this thought. It is undeveloped, it is unpolished, it is coming from within my own struggle to see the possibilities of tomorrow when it comes to Palestinians in Gaza in particular. Because I mourn for them. We should all mourn for the innocent civilians in Gaza. But it is also true, and this was encoded in a eulogy that Moshe Dayan gave in the South at the funeral of a young man, I believe in the 50s, who was killed by a terrorist. This eulogy, if I can find the link, I will post it on my own Facebook page and profile later today. Moshe Dayan said, "This was wrong. There is no defense for this. But we should not delude ourselves into thinking that our existence is not perceived as a threat. This plot of land, this state smaller than New Jersey, is perceived by the outside world as just land. But for us, since our inception as a family, it has always been home for thousands and thousands of years, only interrupted when we were forcefully exiled from our home. It's always been home. And so the return home is just that. This is our home. We have every right to it, both in terms of our history and legally. This is our home. But the fact that we returned home meant that they, because in this case there is a they see us as invaders because we had been away for some time, because we've been forced away. And I won't compare it exactly, but there are resonances here to when survivors of the Shoah tried to go back to their houses in Poland. And the Polish people who occupied their houses stole it after the people themselves had been stolen, saw them as the interlopers and killed them in their own homes because they did not recognize that this house was this Jew's home. If we apply it, friends, as complicated as it is, Moshe Dayan said at this eulogy, we should not be surprised that they want to kill us. What a terrible thing to say. And that means that there is, even though it is not justifiable, a rational kind of hatred. And if Rabbi Sacks is correct, and he always was, and if the Torah can be used to help us think through different kinds of hatred, then the rational kind of hatred that we face, which is different than terrorism, but the rational kind of hatred that we face just for being alive, just for being home again, that rationale can be battled itself. We're not going anywhere. But it's the kind of hatred that can be spoken to. If only there were a Marshall Plan, the way there was after World War II, that helped not just rebuild physically Germany and Japan, but that helped rebuild the cultures of Germany, which had voted for the Nazis, and Japan, which believed in the divinity of the emperor and the kamikaze assault on the rest of the world, especially America. To rebuild the cultures of those places was to acknowledge that there was a rationale, however wrong it was. There were ideas behind the hatred. I don't really know how to do what I'm saying. I don't presume to have the answers here. All that I feel deep down, friends, is the pain that I'm pointing to. But there is wisdom here too. If in the Torah portion we see the difference between Egypt and Amalek, Amalek as irrational hatred, and Egypt as rational while wrong hatred. And the Torah tells us not to hate Egypt and always to hate Amalek, then what we have in front of us is a guideline for acknowledging a spectrum of hate just as there is a spectrum of love, and then to make decisions based on our recovered, thoughtful brains. Trauma makes it impossible to think clearly, and so I'm doing my best. I really don't know what to do, and I'm not in a position where my decisions are going to be the decisions. But I do believe that from within Rabbi Sacks's read of Parshat Ki Teitzei, we could have a way of thinking in the long term, one day, once again, battling the hatred itself. Because there is a rationale to it, however wrong it is. There is a they, and they believe that our existence is wrong where we are, home. Well, they're wrong, but that's what they believe. I don't really know how to approach them, but I do know that beautiful thought leaders like Yossi Klein Halevi have made efforts. I do know that the Arava Institute, an environmental group that recognizes, it's their slogan, nature knows no boundaries. I do know that there are people trying. Do I believe there's hope? I'm a Jew. I'm commanded to hope. Do I know how? No, not yet. But I do believe that there is wisdom waiting in our tradition, even for this moment. And I would bless us to be brave enough to try to access it one more time. The image of God is a universal truth for every human being. That doesn't mean that we don't have to fight. We do. It doesn't mean that all is well for our family, all created in the image of God. We have to fight for them. It, however, points to an aspiration for after. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know what that looks like. But the Torah tells me that even Egypt can become different through Jewish eyes. Amalek can't. Hamas cannot. But Egypt can. And Egypt represents a different kind of enemy. One day, friends, may we be able to confront rational hatred and help it transcend itself. Irrational hatred, there's only one thing to do, which is to eliminate it. But to find a way for rational hatred to transcend itself, which, boy, do I wish I knew how. But if it could happen for Egypt, it could happen for others. Please God, one day, when they're all home, when our hearts are beginning to heal, whenever that will be, may we find a way forward. Something surprising to us today. So, I ask you to join with me in sending our hearts to the east. Let's sing to our family. Let's pledge ourselves to being part of the global Jewish people, and let us demand that we bring them home now. Kolon baleva penima nefesh Yehudi homia ולפתי מזרח קדימה, עין לציון צופיה. עוד לא עבדה תקוותנו, התקווה בת שנות 2000, להיות עם חופשי בארצנו, ארץ ציון וירושלים. להיות עם חופשי בארצנו, ארץ ציון וירושלים. Bring them home now. Am Yisrael Chai. See you tomorrow, friends. Take care.